With LGBTQ plus under attack, Equality Florida's Nadine Smith emotional, the state of the state. Queer News Tonight was proud to participate in the LGBTQ Democratic Caucus Turn It Up, Turn It Out conference in St. Petersburg recently. During the event, Equality Florida's Executive Director, Nadine Smith, presented an emotional speech about the state of the state. Watch this.
Well, good evening, everyone. Yes, I feel so charged up to be here. And I saw my next senator and sorority sister, Valdemi's, come in, and I got happy in my soul. Well, for those who do not know me, I am Michelle Rayner. I am a state representative for House District 70. Also, I'm just running for a little thing called Congress as well. And so I am proud to be here. But the reason that I am standing before you, I'm even more prouder. In my community, Black folks say you give someone their flowers while they are living so they can smell them. And it is for that reason I am profoundly honored to introduce and present Nadine Smith her Lifetime Achievement Award. To many of us in this room, Nadine is not a stranger. Her resume and accomplishments are long. She's the executive director for Equality Florida, the state's largest LGBTQ civil rights organization. In 1993, Nadine was one of the 4 national co-chairs for the March on Washington. She's a Florida Chamber Foundation trustee. Nadine has been named one of the state's most powerful and influential women and one of the 100 most influential Floridians by Influence magazine. Yeah, y'all can clap. But here's the thing. While all of this is amazing and all of this is worthy of flowers, and I'm really proud of you, Nadine, that is not the only reason why I believe Nadine deserves her flowers. She deserves them and more because of who she is. Nadine stands at the intersections of being a woman, being Black, and being a lesbian. Navigating those worlds are not easy, and most certainly not easy for when Nadine came out. Standing at the intersections of her identity are not easy when you are faced with rejection, discrimination, violence, and hate. It is not easy to continuously show up unapologetically and advocate when there are folks who are committed to misunderstanding you and hating you just because of who you are. It is not easy to be the first and then to continue joy and to choose love. But Nadine did that. I think about my 11-year-old self who had no idea that a Nadine Smith existed. I was in my room, realized I was queer, and yet her existence, her life made it, and her advocacy made it possible for me to be standing in front of you this evening. But it's not just me. Nadine did all of that for all of us in this room. Her choice to live out loud and pair that with her fierce advocacy is why all of us are here tonight. She was our advocate when we didn't even know we had an advocate. So her accomplishments are far beyond policy, winning elections, and the like. Her deepest and truest accomplishment is that by showing up authentically and unafraid, she has enabled all of us to do the same. I also want to thank her wife, Andrea. I know she's not here, and her son, Logan. We are grateful that you love Nadine enough to loan her to us and allow her to sacrifice her time for the work that she does. So in closing, Nadine, I will tell you this from the bottom of my heart, and I've said it to you over and over again. We owe you a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid. Thank you.
Look at that. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for the flowers. I'm going to go ahead and put that right there. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. All right. Thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate it. I really do. You know, you hear you're getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, and my first thought was, what do you know? What have you heard? I feel pretty good. Well, first of all, thank you. And I thank you on my behalf, but also because I think what this symbolizes is that we all recognize the time that we are in, and we all recognize that all hands must be on deck at this moment. And this symbolizes the synergy and the work that all of our organizations are engaged in together at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. And if you look around the room, you see that. You see that represented here. And we have to be. The fights that we are fighting now, for those of us with gray in our hair, should seem very familiar. We know what it's like when they go after our schools and they tell us that they will erase us or harm us if we don't hide. We know what it is like to be targeted for no other reason but for political gain. We've fought these fights before. And they look at our community and they say to themselves, who is the most vulnerable, and that's who we'll go after, which is why they have put a very clear target on the backs of trans youth in our schools. They think that they are powerless. They think they are numerically so small that they can caricature who they are. And it is our job not only not actually to tell the story of trans young people, but to create the platforms where they can tell their own stories and we can amplify their voices. And that is what we are committed to doing in the face of the hatred and the demonization that the far right has made a cornerstone of their election campaign. I want to talk about why we are where we are right now, and there are two very big reasons. The first one is very obvious. There are two Floridians who want to be the next president of the United States. One is the former president of the United States who lives in Mar-a-Lago, and the other is the current governor of Florida. And they've been fighting behind the scenes for quite some time, but it spilled into the public recently where Trump called DeSantis gutless for refusing to make public his vaccination status, and where DeSantis began ratcheting up his criticism of Trump for even his meager response to COVID. And so what we have here is a legislative agenda that has nothing to do with what Floridians actually need, doesn't address a single problem, and in fact invents them, all so he can put on his campaign literature that he is fighting the culture war. So that's part one of why this roster of censorship and surveillance bills that the governor is pushing and Republican leadership is pushing, it's all because right-wing think tanks told them you have to check these boxes if you're going to pull Trump's base out from underneath him. The second thing that we all have to understand is this. I remember the day I realized that Trump was going to become president. It was a year and a month before he announced formally, though everyone knew he was going to throw his hat in the ring. And I was in a ballroom in Miami, Florida with Chev Jones, with Republican Chip LaMarca. I won't stop you. And it was a Leadership Florida event. And it was the final one of the four gatherings. And what I remember vividly was it was a demographer on the agenda. It said demographer Jim Johnson from University of North Carolina is going to speak about disruptive demographics and the impact on consumer markets. And I thought, I'm going to very slyly play Words with Friends in the back because that sounds boring. And so this older black man who had many granddad kind of jokes, lulled us into a sense of warmth and camaraderie. And then he really just dropped the hammer. I remember he said, America is in the midst of a generational convulsion that is going to roil every part of our society, politically, economically, and socially. And he said it's the collision of two demographic realities, the graying of America and the browning of America. And the graying of America was that the older generation, because of healthcare inequities and economic inequities and how that all plays out, that the older generation in America was overwhelmingly white. But that the younger generation, there was no majority. It was a real melting pot racially. And so I have known these stats as a mathematical reality, but hadn't really conjured fully what that meant. And what he said that day is the collision of these generational realities has pricked a kind of existential terror, particularly among older white people who overwhelmingly vote. And so the vision of America that we have been wrestling with is make America great again, take America backwards, put us back in the closet, put black people back in their place, send immigrants back to where they came from. All of those things that had his openly racist neo-Nazi base cheering in the streets, but also struck a chord with people who would never align themselves in any public way with those sentiments, but they had a sense that something was shifting. And in that shift, even if they never recognized privilege, they understood that perhaps on the other side of it, something would be gone. And so we have to understand where we are right now and why these appeals of DeSantis, where he chants free Florida while making us less free, creating more surveillance, more censorship, more book banning, more fear, more policing, how these contradictions exist and why they exist. And we have to understand it because we are up against people who declared war on us years ago. Donald Trump didn't start running in June of 2016. He was running when he was challenging Barack Obama's citizenship. You know, he was running when he was calling for the death penalty for the exonerated Central Park victims of racism, right? So we have to understand what we are up against. And the intersection where I live is a busy one. But here's what I know, and I'll just leave you with this. In addition to my gratitude, I draw hope from this community because we know what it is to fight to exist in our own homes growing up as children. We know what it is to fight to exist when the government turns its back, when an epidemic is decimating us. We know what it is to fight to exist when we didn't have organizations like this one, like Equality Florida. We know what it is to forge family out of something that is tougher than blood. And I know that when the marriage fight came, the far right said, we have the perfect wedge issue. Democrats are a little wobbly on it. Republicans are incensed at the idea. And so they went after us, state after state. 38 times we lost. But in the wake of every one of those defeats, something incredible happened. And that was the polling numbers got better for LGBT issues. It was as though our neighbors who had just voted to deny us what their own families could enjoy, it was as though they woke up and surveyed the damage and thought, what the hell did we just do? And so right now, there are people, some of them in our families, some of them are high school friends, some of them are coworkers, who are in the grip of a fear that they may not be able to articulate, but they are drawn to a message that says, don't worry, I will put things back in place so that you do not have to worry about losing a single thing. And the only antidote to that, just like we discovered with marriage, we couldn't talk about marriage in terms of rights and benefits. We had to talk about it in terms of love. And that's when the dial began to change. And right now, we can be infuriated by that fear that we see playing out in the kinds of legislation that Ron DeSantis is inflicting on our state. We can feel that towards that cousin, that uncle, that friend who is suddenly spouting conspiracy theories. But what we know is that the path forward for our country means that every single person in this room has to have a vision of America that has them in it, that has possibility, that has economic security, that has something for my 10-year-old child and your children and your grandchildren. And we are at the forefront. We are at that intersection because any agenda for the LGBTQ community that does not tackle racism, that does not tackle sexism, leaves us behind. So I am proud to accept this, and I'm grateful for all of you And we're just getting started, so thank you all so much.
Thank you, Nadine Smith. That was wonderful, insightful, and certainly
LGBTQ+ news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ+